Welcome to Home Time. I'm Dean Johnson.
And I'm JoAnne Liebeler. A house is one of the biggest investments that most of us will ever make. So you'll want to know as much as possible about it before you sign on the dotted line.
In this videotape, we'll take you through the steps of examining, inspecting, and assessing a house. Now, it takes years and lots of inspections to become a fully qualified home inspector.
In the next hour or so, we'll show you the basic procedure for a home inspection, as well as some crucial tips and some things to look out for.
There are several reasons to do a home evaluation. One of the most common is to assess the condition of a house before you buy it.
But someone who's selling a house might also want to have an inspection to see if buyers are going to uncover anything troublesome and have it repaired first.
And even if you're not buying or selling, what we show you on this videotape should help you assess your own house for comfort, safety, and to find and fix those small problems before they become big ones.
Home Time is made possible by Chevy Truck, who brings you Chevy full-size pickups, today's big pickups for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Chevy S10 pickups, today's compact pickups that play as hard as they work. Chevy S10 Blazer, today's sport utility vehicle in 2- and 4-door models. Chevy Astro all-wheel drive, today's mid-size van with standard 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. More people are winning with the heartbeat of America. Today's truck is Chevrolet. The National Home Time PBS series is brought to you weekly by Chevy Truck in conjunction with the Stanley Works.
Thanks for buying this videotape.
We hope after watching it, you'll agree that it contains a lot of helpful information for whatever home improvement project you're planning.
We also hope you realize that neither the Home Time Video Library nor the PBS series would be possible without the continued generous support of Chevy Truck.
Without Chevy's underwriting, this tape might cost substantially more.
So thanks to you for watching, and thanks to Chevy Truck. Home inspections are usually done for a buyer. Typically, they occur after a purchase agreement's been signed, but before you close on the house. If you're a buyer, you want to know about any potential problems.
Most do-it-yourself inspectors won't be able to do this type of detailed inspection properly, so we recommend hiring a professional. However, the more you know about home inspections, the more valuable the professional inspector can be to you.
We'll only be discussing the condition of the home, not its value. This is an inspection, not an appraisal. Remember, an inspection won't necessarily tell you if the house is a good buy or if you're going to be happy living there.
Each house is different, and they're different for several reasons. In various parts of the country, there are different standard construction practices. Plus, materials and techniques have changed over the years. So we've picked a couple of different houses to go through with you. Now, this house was built in the 1970s, and it'll show us one set of things to be looking for.
But throughout this tape, we'll be jumping from house
To house,
to house
to house,
and back here again to show you as many situations as we possibly can.
Now, you might think that a house that's only 15 or 20 years old is still in pretty good shape, but really, it's like a car that has 50,000 miles on it. At this age, it's just started to ripen, and some of the systems might need replacement.
We'll be examining the initial construction, looking for lack of maintenance by prior homeowners, and keeping an eye out for mistakes made in do-it-yourself repairs and improvements.
We'll be inspecting this house as if we were doing it on the behalf of some potential buyers, and we'll pass on some hints in the process. Well, that way, when you go to look at, let's say a fuse box, you'll be able to do a little bit more than just kind of nod your head and pretend to know what you're talking about. Say, what have you been doing?
Oh, I just started the dishwasher.
Oh, good thinking.
I'll tell you why I started the dishwasher first a little bit later. Now, to do a home evaluation, it requires some basic tools, but we'll show you those as we use them.
You also need common sense and a basic knowledge of construction. And if you're in a buying situation, I think you should be a little assertive. Don't be afraid to ask questions like, have you had any water leaks?
Or could we see your utility bills for the last 3 years?
Or was the roof installed by a reputable contractor?
Remember, even your agent is technically working for the seller. Many times you're the only one watching after your own interests.
Using the right tools and the right materials make any job turn out better. Like using a garden hose and a can of spray paint to lay out and mark the planting beds for this landscape project.
And using the right truck for the job, the Chevy WT-1500 truck, with a bigger standard payload than Ford's F-150. Holds everything we need for this project.
Nobody else offers this tough Duragrill.
And the biggest V6 in its class gives you more standard horsepower than Ford.
The full-size Ford doesn't offer this double-deck loading either. This Chevy lets you carry supplies on the top and tools on the bottom.
For landscaping, one of the handiest tools we've come across is a sod cutter. Once you get it started, like so, you can skim the sod cleanly and easily with a few well-placed kicks.
And for hauling this sod away, don't worry about getting this Chevy dirty. Just spray it clean.
The cargo box is all welded with no exposed mounting bolts to trap water and cause rust. Okay, got that one there. When you're ready to start planting, the Chevy Astro is perfect for bringing home the new arrivals.
The sliding side door and swing-out rear doors make loading and unloading your cargo quick and easy.
The Astro is the only mid-size van to offer the combination of all-wheel drive with standard four-wheel anti-lock brakes. And it converts easily from transporting plants to transporting passengers with available seating for 8.
Keep coming. Good. When planting a tree, experts advise digging a hole twice as large as the tree's root ball and then mixing in manure or peat moss with a backfill. It gives the new roots good soil for quick growth.
These balled and burlap trees can be heavy and awkward, but the Chevy S10 Tahoe has the biggest available V6 in its class.
And with a 4.3-liter engine, it's ready to tow up to 6,000 pounds. And that's more than enough for this last load of shrubs.
Our last step here is covering the exposed soil with hardwood mulch. Now this keeps in moisture, prevents weed growth, and eventually decomposes into organic soil matter.
You need a lot on a project this big, but there's no problem getting it home with Chevy's 4-door S10 Blazer 4x4. With the biggest V6 in its class, towing capacity of 5,500 pounds, and standard 4-wheel anti-lock brakes Ford doesn't even offer.
So whether your project is big or small, when you have a Chevy truck working for you, you'll be a winner.
And the continued support of Chevy Truck has made home time a winner.
So thanks to you for watching, and thanks to today's truck, Chevrolet.
The most common problems reported by home inspectors around the country have to do with water.
You want water to flow away from the building, so one of the main things you check on is drainage. You want the land around the building to have a positive grade away from the building. And this house here looks pretty good. Surface water should run away from the house.
Proper gutters and downspouts are crucial. You don't want water from the roof ending up right next to the foundation, and a good downspout will carry water away from the house. These 8-foot extensions really do the trick. However, over here, it looks like we've got a low spot. Water probably ponds up in this area. You can tell because the grass isn't growing very well. There's all kinds of dirt that's collected on the stones here. It's not a major problem, just more of a cosmetic one.
See, Joe, look at this one.
Well, that doesn't look so good, does it?
Now, we hate to see deck posts like this buried in the ground. We'd much rather see them up on some type of concrete pier. If they aren't, sometimes this is what will happen. The bottom of the post here is decayed a little bit from being in contact with the soil. Yeah, this is something that should be taken care of.
We've got a similar problem here with this retaining wall. These old pieces of telephone pole are just the wrong material for this. Landscape timbers or even a masonry wall would look better and certainly last longer. You know, before you even look at the house, you should make a couple of notes about the condition of the exterior structures. Things like fences, patios, the deck, or garage if it isn't attached to the house. Did you want to make a note of that,
Yep,
Ben?
I got it here.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize some of these problems. All you have to do is take some time to locate them, then write them down, and think a little bit about what the replacement or repair cost would be.
Trees and landscaping. Now, don't forget to take a look at these. Check for the obvious things like, does everything appear to be in good shape? Are there any trees that might perhaps have to be removed? And check to see that there aren't any branches that are resting on overhead power lines, or on the house for that matter. Branches can damage the house, and they also provide a path for insects and rodents. And speaking of insects, the pond back here is pretty, but it just might be a breeding ground for mosquitoes.
Also, look at neighboring lots. You're not just buying a house, you're buying a neighborhood, which means neighboring trees, drainage problems, and so on.
Well, we've made a couple of notes and discoveries on this lot, but now let's move on and show you a couple of other houses.
This downspout discharges too close to the house, and the water running out of this seeps down too close to the foundation. In fact, this is probably the cause of the stains and decay directly inside on the basement wall.
And here we have tree branches that are too close to the structure of a house. In a good wind, they just might damage the stucco or the roofing. Once you've examined the lot and the outdoor structures, take a look at the exterior of the house. We'll talk about structural things first. You want to look for any signs that the house is shifted or sagged. In particular, you want to be concerned about any uneven settling. Now, a little bit of settling is okay. It's even to be expected. But if one part of the house settles more than another, you could have problems with sticking doors, cracks in the walls, broken pipes, these kinds of things. A serious structural problem might show up along the ridge line of the roof. You should worry if it sags anywhere. It should be straight and level, like this one seems to be. And if you notice that square windows have turned into parallelograms, that's called racking, and it's another symptom of uneven settling. But these look good here.
Sight along the sides of the house. This way you can tell if anything's bowed out or if anything's started to sag. And it looks real good on this house. Now, depending on the type of construction, you might be able to get a peek at the foundation. Look real carefully for any large cracks which might suggest significant settling. Fortunately, along this house, you really can't see too much, but hopefully on the inside, we'll get a better look.
Well, now we can take a look at the finishing materials on the outside of the house. We've got 4 different materials used here. We've got brick veneer as the base, wood shakes, plywood paneling, and composition lap siding on the other sides of the house. The stuff in front here looks pretty good. On brick veneer, we're checking for cracks in the bricks and in the mortar. On the wood surfaces, we check for stains or any signs of rot. And these look pretty good. We're seeing some very thoroughly. So moisture's gotten behind the paint and it's flaking off.
The south side of the house is where the materials on a house tend to age the fastest. Here they get the most weather and sun exposure. You can see the paint starting to flake a little bit, which is primarily a cosmetic problem. It is something that has to be dealt with. Another thing to be concerned about is the clearance between the ground and the wood. We like to see 5 or 6 inches so insects and water don't have a direct path to the wood, but that really is sort of an ideal number. I doubt we'll have any problems in this area.
Hey, come take a look at this. We got another problem under here.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. The dirt that's behind this retaining wall is pressed right up against the siding. Now that's direct ground-to-wood contact, which is bad news. I'll bet if we were to dig this area out, we'd find that the siding underneath here has started to decay.
Oh yeah, look here. The concrete block ends right here, and that's where the wood starts. You can see it's just all rotted out. If I stick my awl in there, it's just real soft.
So the builder should have carried the foundation block around the corner and started the siding here from this point. Or they should have moved this retaining wall back a couple of feet just so that the dirt wouldn't be in direct contact with the siding.
What do you want to bet there's water stains on the drywall in there?
I'll bet there is. You want to check right now?
I'm just taking a note. We can look at it later.
Okay.
Let's look at some other houses and check out some other exterior situations. Now here's an example of some cedar shingles that need repair and refinishing. More frequent painting would have saved these shingles, but they're too weathered and cracked and damaged. These need to be replaced. These shingles are on the south side of the house. It's interesting to note that the shingles on the north side of the same house are still in good condition.
A large crack in stucco like this indicates a structural problem. The location of the crack suggests that the back part of the house, which is probably an addition, has settled and pulled away from the main house.
All stucco will crack, but the significance of the cracks will vary depending on the climate. Diagnosing the meaning of the cracks should be left to a local professional.
And remember to be on the lookout for stains in the siding material. Here, the stains suggest that water on the adjacent flat roof isn't being delivered to the ground properly. As you're checking out the siding, you should be checking out the windows and the doors too. We'll examine these more closely once we're inside, but when you're outside, take a good look at the frame. Make sure that there isn't any water damage or rot. You should also take a good look at the glass, the paint job, the glazing putty, the caulking. That looks pretty good. And we like to see a drip cap like this above the window. This is metal flashing that diverts the water away from the top of the window. Also, you should note whether or not there are storm windows. Now, these are double pane thermal glass, so storm windows are unnecessary. There should be caulk around a window between the trim and the siding material to keep moisture out. This window is missing caulk. And here at the edge of this wall, there should also be caulk at the joint between the wood and the brick.
A roof is one of the more critical areas on the home to take a look at. Unfortunately, it's also one of the more difficult to get to. We recommend you get as close as you can, but don't actually get on the roof. Leave that to a professional, somebody who's more comfortable getting up on it and has the right insurance. But getting up on a ladder, that's a good idea. Age is a key point with roofing. A composition shingle like this should last about 15 to 20 years if it's been installed properly. This roof is looking good. It's probably about 10 years old. There's only the smallest signs of deterioration. However, there is an area around the chimney that's a different color. Now, this could be a bundle of defective shingles, or it could be a repair. Part of checking out a roof is to take a look at the flashing. This is the metal around openings in the roof that keeps moisture from leaking in. It's not uncommon to see improper flashing around a chimney. It should be set into the masonry and overlapped, like it is in this one. Check the structure of the roof. From here, you should be able to sight along the edge. Make sure nothing's sagging. Also check the fascia and soffits. The edge of the roof is a good spot for leaks, rotting wood, and insect damage. The soffit here has discoloration and mildew. Now, it might be that the paint job wasn't done properly last time around, or sometimes the vents in the soffit get dirty and block the airflow, and the soffits don't get ventilated, so that could be causing stains. Now, we like to see soffit vents. It's really the best way to ventilate an attic. Just as I suspected, these really are dirty. But they're easy to clean, and once clean, they do help the roof hold up a lot longer. From this high perspective, you should be able to check out the gutters. Look for any rust or rot, depending on the material, and the gutter should slope toward a drain. Also, make sure that all the joints here are sealed. And even though there's some debris in the gutters from some recent storms, it looks like they've been cleaned pretty regularly. There's a branch down at one end sticking out of the downspout. You can almost count on a clog in the gutter when leaves and debris fall into it. These are the symptoms of a composition roof that needs replacing. The shingles have started to curl, and the granulation is starting to come off the surface. Note the roofing cement on almost every roof penetration. There should be flashing. Whenever you see roofing cement, you know it's the start of a problem. The spot will eventually leak again, and that'll mean more cement, and so on, until it's finally time to fix the problem, and not just patch it up. Here is a pretty standard cedar shingle roof. These shingles are 10 to 15 years old. They're in good shape still, and they'll give good service for a while yet. But on this roof, we want to clean the bird nests out of the vents. Every little detail on the roof has to be looked at carefully. This is a cedar shake roof that's ready for replacing. The shakes are damaged, warped, or missing. Flat roofs are a whole nother can of worms. There are many ways of installing these. This one looks pretty good. If you see splits or cracks, these need to be repaired right away. There are blisters and wrinkles on this roof, but they aren't a major problem. They will have to be repaired when they get larger. If you determine that you have a roof that needs replacing, you have to decide if you can put the shingles on top of the existing roof or if you need a complete tear-off, which is a lot more expensive. Most areas will allow 2 layers of shingles, but not 3. This roof has 1 layer of shingles. It may look like it has 2, but that's because the shingles are always doubled up on the edge of the roof.
If you're unable to get right up to the roof, you might consider looking through a pair of binoculars. Now, the other roof element that deserves a good close look is the chimney. You should always carefully examine the condition of a brick chimney. It shouldn't be leaning, and the brick and mortar should be in good condition, nothing loose or flaking. On this chimney, we'd notice that there seems to be 1 defective brick, which isn't a big deal, although it should be replaced. Try to get a look at the cap, which is the mortar part at the top. This should shed rainwater away from the flues. Now, this one has a few hairline cracks, and if these aren't sealed, they'll only get bigger each winter and start to cause problems. This is a chimney that'll have to be repaired. The mortar is decaying, the bricks are loose, and the cap is in bad condition. All these factors will allow water to leak inside and cause damage.
Well, that about wraps it up for the outside. You notice a lot of what we're doing here is making a list. A big part of doing a home evaluation is looking at everything in the house and noting its condition.
Right. Even if you're not an expert in diagnosing problems, it forces you to examine the entire house, to think about what repairs might be needed and what extra cost you might be looking at after closing.
Well, let's take a look inside.
All right.
If you want a plan of attack for the inside, your best bet's starting from the top and working your way down.
So we'll start in the attic. It's kind of close quarters up there. You have to enter through an access panel that's in the powder room. Oh, you're going to need these.
Yeah. Okay.
Here you go.
Thanks, Joe. Don't try to climb around in an attic like this unless you're confident you can walk only on the framing. You've got to watch your step. You can only step where there's framing under you. One of the most important things to check in an attic is the underside of the roofing. The sheathing in the framing should look solid, no bends and no stains. Look for dark stains or damage around the roof penetrations, the chimney and the vents. Now this vent here looks like it's been a problem. Somebody's rigged up some sort of plastic to catch the water. It obviously indicates a leak, and you should assume this vent's going to have to be replaced. The insulation is important too. Check with the local utility company and building department to find out what's recommended in the attic floor. In our area, there should be R39, which means about 12 or 13 inches of fiberglass. Now there's less than that in some places up here, so it wouldn't hurt to blow some more in. And make sure to double check the venting. Since there are vents in the underside of the soffits outside, we want to make sure that the air that comes in through those vents can circulate up into the attic space. And the insulators did a good job because they installed cardboard chutes to keep the insulation from blocking the airflow. A couple of other things to check for in the attic. Make sure that all the vent pipes and ducts from plumbing stacks and exhaust fans go all the way to the outside. Sometimes you'll find that they just end here, dumping moist air and sewer gases into this space. Keep an eye out for signs of rodents or insects, and look at any wiring you see. Sometimes you'll find open splices up here. That is, electrical connections that are just wrapped in tape and not put in a junction box.
Oh, by the way, were the soffit vents open?
Yeah, they had cardboard baffles up there.
Oh, but it was hot up there anyway.
Oh, you can say that again.
Well, now we can go on and explore some of the more comfortable and accessible parts of the house. And when you first walk into a home, it's likely that you're going to get some pretty strong first impressions. So you'll need to be objective and get beyond the decorating and the furnishings. If you're examining a furnished house, look behind the sofas and under the rugs, but get permission first.
Generally, in each room you should check the floors, walls, ceilings, windows, doors, trim lights, switches, outlets, and heating.
Your eyes and your own sense of balance will give you a pretty good idea if the ceilings and the floors are level, and if the walls are square and plumb.
If anything's out of alignment, you should be suspicious. This could indicate uneven settling.
Now the carpet in here is still in pretty good shape, but as a potential buyer, you'd need to decide whether or not you liked it and what it'd cost to replace it.
Drywall construction is standard in modern housing. This drywall's been up for 15 years, so it's not unusual to expect a couple of nail pops or small cracks. A small crack like this one's no problem. It can be finished next time the house is painted. It's the large cracks or bowed walls or worse yet stains that you have to worry about.
Hey Dean, there's a stain on the ceiling here by the fireplace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the paint's a little chipped too.
What do you suppose that is, a bad drywall joint? Or that could be a leak from around the chimney from a while back.
That's kind of a tough one to call because when we were up on the roof was fine and so was the flashing around the chimney. This would be a good one to run by a professional inspector. Now here's a real good example of a fine crack in a plaster wall. Now this is real minor, nothing at all to worry about. Sometimes when you find wallpaper over plaster, you'll see seams like this lifting up on the edges. Again, nothing to worry about. And over here we see some drywall tape that's lifting out from the corner. Again, these are all cosmetic problems. And a stain in any ceiling is something that should be investigated. In this case, we'd go outside and take a look at the exterior, and we'd find that there's a porch roof that butts up to the side wall of the house, which leads us to believe that very possibly the flashing was done incorrectly, and that's what caused the leak. On this particular house, there's a brand new roof. So hopefully the problem's been solved, and what we're looking at here is ancient history. But it wouldn't hurt to check to see who the contractor was to make sure they're reputable and that it wasn't done by some fly-by-nighter. Be sure to operate some of the windows, especially double sash units. You want to find out if they've been painted shut, which can be a real inconvenience. And check the sill for rot. It's one of the first places that it shows up. That's pretty good shape there. The condition of the windows really tells you a lot about how the entire home's been maintained.
The quality of the finished carpentry is another good index of how much care was taken in the construction of the house. We'll check to see that the corners have been mitered nicely and that the trim is secured well against the walls, and also that the nail holes were puttied in before the trim was painted or varnished.
As you move throughout the interior, check the lights and switches. Is the switch control positive? Do the lights dim at all when you turn on appliances? Also count the number of receptacles. 3 or 4 to a room is a pretty good average, and you don't want to see any cords running underneath the carpet. Also check the condition of the receptacles. Do you see any that are scorched? Do any feel warm?
Test a few of the receptacles with a diagnostic tester. On this model, if everything's wired correctly, 2 amber lights turn on. Now, if you don't get the proper reading, you may want to have an electrician check things out. An outlet or a switch may also provide you with the way of checking inside the wall for any insulation. Now, you may want to turn off the power before you do this. Now, we're going to check in this crack between the electrical box and the wall. And in this 60-year-old house, we're not seeing many signs of insulation. Looks like there's a thin band of some cellulose. That's not great, but it's better than nothing.
Fireplaces demand a close examination. Look all over to see if you see any cracks or damaged brick. Look for evidence of smoke over the top of the opening here, and check to make sure the damper works all right. And if you can, look up the flue, and if there's more than a 1/4 inch of creosote, or it looks really greasy, you know that's going to have to be cleaned soon.
The interior rooms. There are some specific things you should look for in the kitchen. Well, for instance, outlets that are next to the sink should have GFCI protection. Most of the time, what that means is that there's this funny little outlet with 2 buttons on it that say test and reset. A GFCI outlet is sort of like a super sensitive circuit breaker. They're especially important around sinks and other areas. Now, this kitchen does not have one. They're not expensive, but they do have to be wired correctly in order to work. And it's probably worth it because one GFCI outlet can protect several other regular outlets.
Many home inspectors, the first thing they do when they get to a house, even before they take a look at the exterior, is to start the dishwasher. This way, when they come back to the kitchen later on in the tour to inspect it, they can see how the dishwasher works. Now, one of the things you should look for is to see how the water's drained. There should be just a little bit left on the bottom there. And also, run your hand along the floor here to make sure none's leaked out. Later on, when we're in the basement, we'll also check for evidence of water leaks down there.
Underneath the sink here, well, we've got a water filtering system. I guess that's not too surprising since we're using a well for water here. We're looking for signs of any leaks in the pipes, in the shutoff valves, and in the sink. Well, here we've got a valve that's got some crust on it, and it's probably due to a small leak, and it's corroded itself over, but it'll probably leak again. We also check the floor inside here. If there's a history of leaks, it'll be stained or even slightly rotten. That looks pretty good. Also, if there's excessive rust on the side of the disposer, it'll probably need to be replaced. On the faucet and check it for water flow and for any leaks. And then run the garbage disposal. You want to make sure that the blades are spinning and that it sounds okay. That checks out. Then try opening some of the cabinet doors and drawers. You want to make sure that they feel solid and that they operate smoothly.
Okay, northwest bedroom. There's a couple of things you want to watch for as you're touring through a house. One thing is you want to test all the doors to make sure they're operating properly. If there's been structural settling, the door might bind or it might not even latch properly. Yeah, that's working all right. You also want to make sure that there's heat available to all the habitable rooms. When you first enter the house, you might want to turn on the heat, of course depending on the season, and check to make sure that all the registers and radiators are operating. Make sure there are smoke detectors. They should be outside bedrooms, at the top of stairs, and one on each level. And they should work. That works.
There are a couple of key things to check for in a bathroom, just like in a kitchen. For one, you want some sort of ventilation, a window or an exhaust fan. This one seems to work. You should also be looking for a GFCI outlet, which we do not have here. And then fill up the sink and let it drain. You want to listen for any gurgling noises, which could indicate improper venting. The bathroom is also the best place to check the water pressure and the flow. To do this, open up the sink faucets, the shower, and flush the toilet. You want to see if the flow in either one is reduced significantly. This looks okay. Then check out the operation of the toilet itself. Does it run or does it take a long time to fill up? This one's doing okay. Check around the base of the toilet for stains, for rotting wood, for weak flooring. These indicate leaks around the wax ring. See if the toilet rocks, which could indicate, again, some rot or maybe faulty mounting. And then check around the floor of the tub or the shower for any leaks or rotting wood. Check the tiles in the tub or shower. Press against them. If they give at all, it could mean that there's damaged plaster or wallboard underneath them. You should check around the faucets, the controls, soap dishes, and along the bottom row of tiles. Okay, this feels pretty good. And here's a little home inspector's trick of the trade. The date that the toilet was manufactured is usually stamped on the bottom of the tank lid or the back of the tank. Here it is, October 27th, 1975. Now, toilets are usually installed within a few months of when they're made, so this will give you a good indication of when the house was built or when they remodeled the bathroom.
Say, JoAnne,
Yeah.
take a look at this once. There's some water damage in the closet.
Yeah?
Look at the walls all bowed out down here. They've done a little bit of patching, and that carpet's good and wet.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. Right outside here is where all that dirt is terraced up against the siding.
I'll bet there's a lot of rot behind the dirt. The water's probably coming down through the outside wall, and that's where we're seeing all of our damage.
Yeah. This is definitely something a professional inspector would catch. And they might even recommend that you remove some of the drywall in the area to see if there's been any damage to the studs behind it.
If you were buying this house, this is exactly the type of thing you need an inspection to help you find out.
Right, because then the buyer could go back to the seller and say, hey, you got a serious problem here. This kind of information just pays for a home inspection. You got that on the list?
Yep,
All
got
right.
it down. Okay. If the house you're looking at has a basement, it's one of the key areas you want to examine. A basement holds all kinds of clues to the systems and structures of a house. This particular house, a split-entry home, has most of the basement finished off in bedrooms, but this furnace room here gives us a pretty good idea of some of the systems you'd encounter in a basement. Well, for instance, you might want to take a look at the foundation here to see if there are any cracks in the block or concrete.
Or water, for that matter. We've already seen how water can cause problems in a lower level like this. Well, an unfinished room or basement will give you a lot of clues if there have been any water problems in the house. Well, first, check to see if there's a musty smell in the air. Check for water stains along the walls or on the floor. Any sheetrock that's close to the floor will really show any water problems. Is there a sump pump? Are the appliances or belongings up on blocks? Actually, it's probably a pretty good sign if the personal belongings are resting directly on the floor.
Well, there's evidence of water on this side of the room. In fact, there's some standing water here right underneath the hot water heater, which leads us to believe it might be leaking. So we'll check underneath the drain valve here and underneath the relief valve drain tube. There's some deposits here, but there doesn't seem to be any water leaking out. So we look on top here and find that there's a valve here that's leaking. In fact, looks like the water is actually running right down through the hot water heater. And that's actually really pretty good news. It's a lot easier to replace a single valve than the entire hot water heater. Looking in the basements of our other houses, we see a foundation that's showing some problems. You can see that the paint is peeling off, and there are signs of efflorescence. This is a chalk-like material that's left by water that seeps through the masonry of the foundation and evaporates. So there's definitely been a water problem in this basement at some point. This foundation has a nasty-looking crack, but it's actually not serious. This house is 80 years old, so cracks can be expected. The crack is less than 1/4 inch wide, and it's just pulled apart. There's been no shifting up or down along either side of the crack.
While you're in the basement, you should take a look at the structure of the house. Check out the ends of the floor joist near the rim joist. Use a screwdriver or an awl to probe the wood. If it feels soft or mushy at all, that could indicate rot or even an insect problem. That's definitely a red flag item. And note if there are anchor bolts holding the sill to the foundation. These are important for a house in a potential earthquake area.
Okay, now into the heating unit. There are several different types of heating and cooling systems. This particular one is a forced air heating system with central air conditioning. It's standard in our part of the country in new construction and not uncommon in other parts of the country. But to do a thorough inspection on a heating and cooling system is beyond the ability of most homeowners, but there are a few things you can look for. Anything that burns something, gas, oil, or propane, has to have a flue to carry away the fumes. Check the flue to make sure it's good and solid and isn't rusty at all, and make sure that it rises as it moves away from the furnace to get rid of the fumes. Also check the flue here on the hot water heater. That looks good.
On a system with an air conditioner, check along the top of the furnace for any signs of rust. Water condenses on the cooling coil inside, and if it isn't drained away properly, rust can form along the top here. Here's an example of an old furnace. This is a coal furnace that's been converted to burn gas, and it's definitely a case where you want to call in a qualified inspector or a heating contractor to come and take a look at it. And all this along here, well, this is another can of worms. This is probably asbestos insulation that's been wrapped around the heating pipes. And sooner or later, it's going to have to be removed. And it should be removed by a licensed asbestos removal contractor. And it's not cheap. It could cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars. If you think that you do have an asbestos problem, you should consult an expert right away.
Okay, onto the plumbing system. Now this house has a well. There's nothing wrong with wells, but it probably doesn't hurt to ask the owner if they've had any special problems with it, or if they might have a water test available. And one of the common problems you'll run into is called short cycling. When the house needs water, the pump should turn on, run for a couple of minutes, and then turn off again. If it turns on and turns off and turns on and turns off in short cycles, let's say less than a minute, then it probably needs servicing. Now, whether you have a well or you get your water from the city water supply, you'll probably find copper pipes in new construction, although sometimes we are running into plastic pipe. In older homes, you might find galvanized pipe. With this type of pipe, mineral deposits can form inside over time, reducing water flow. In the bathroom, if you notice bad water flow and you come into the basement and you find galvanized pipe, it's usually these deposits that are reducing the water flow, and some of the pipes might have to be replaced.
The drain pipes here are made out of plastic, and actually they look to be in pretty good shape. Other materials you'll find are cast iron and galvanized steel. Now, as you check over the drain pipes, look for any signs of leaks or cracks or stains. And you also want to look for wet or rotten or stained wood around the lines. And since the dishwasher is right above us, we're just double checking to make sure that that hasn't leaked. That looks pretty good. And you also want your drain pipes to slope down, about 1/4 inch for every foot of run. And every house will have something called a main cleanout plug. It allows you to work on the line where it runs out of the house. Now, if it looks like it's been used a lot, ask the owner why. This is an example of an old cast iron drain pipe. It's also an example of the sort of damage structural settling can cause. Because it's been bent, the joint is opened up and there's evidence of leaking down the side. This soil stack will have to be replaced.
The electric service panel, or the fuse box as many people like to call it, can be located in several different spots in the house. In this particular house, it's located in the garage, and this is definitely a stop you should make on any home tour. Now, one of the main things we're looking for is the size of the service, how many amps the box is rated for. We want to see at least 100 amps. A professional inspector can tell by looking at the wire size. Do-it-yourselfers like us have to rely on a few clues, like the rating of the main breaker and the listed rating of the panel itself. Also check the meter box. If it's round, that usually means it's 60 amp service. Square means 100 amps, and rectangular, like this, means 200 amps. Now, we don't think you should take off the main panel here. Leave that to a professional home inspector or an electrician. But you can feel the breakers. Check to see if they're hot, which could mean they're either faulty or overloaded. And check that every cable coming out of the box is secured with a cable connector. If not, like this one, it's a sign of a bad do-it-yourself electrical job. Any connection should be made inside a junction box. Any exposed splices or wire nuts like these are signs of sloppy do-it-yourself work and should be corrected. All right, aluminum wiring is a misunderstood subject, but something you should be aware of. From about 1965 to 1980, aluminum wiring was real common in home construction, but there are some problems associated with the connections, especially before 1975. If it isn't done right, the connection can heat up and cause fires, but that can be avoided with proper fixtures and installation techniques. Aluminum cable is still often used for larger appliances and sub-panels like this cable for the stove. As long as it's used properly, it's not a problem. But if you are looking at a house with aluminum wiring and was built before 1975, it's best to get either a professional home inspector or an electrician to take a look at it. Okay. Electrical panels to watch out for are setups like these, with lots of added-on sub-panels. You definitely want a professional to check it out. And if you see this type of wiring, it's called knob and tube, you'll be looking at replacement costs.
There we go, that works.
Okay.
It's not a bad idea to test the garage door opener and make sure that it reverses properly. Now, if it doesn't, that could be trouble.
Now, once you've taken a look at the entire home, you'll find yourself going back over different areas, kind of cross-checking things.
Right. And if you're evaluating a home, don't forget one very important tool, the neighbors. If you're a potential buyer, you'll want to meet them anyway, and they'll be able to tell you some things about the neighborhood and about the house.
Well, the neighbors might say, you know, there's been a furnace truck out in front of that house 5 times in the last 6 months.
Or they might tell you that it's been a dry summer this year, but last summer we all had water in our basements.
Another good spot to get information from is a local building department. Most cities will have a file on each home. In that file, there will be information on permits and building inspection records that usually go back over a fairly long period of time.
Now, we've only been able to lightly touch on all the knowledge you'll need to do a good home inspection. As we said in the beginning, there will be a point when you'll want to turn things over to a professional.
Now, anyone can call themselves a professional home inspector. Unfortunately, few states license home inspectors, so find an experienced one that isn't tied to a contractor.
One way to be sure is to find someone who's a member of the American Society of Home Inspectors. This is a nonprofit professional society that has pretty tough membership requirements.
And a home inspector can not only point out problems in a house that you're looking at, but can also educate you on how to care for those particular systems in that house.
We've put a list of useful books in the project guide so you can read more about home inspection.
And you might want to check out some of our other home time titles if you'd like to educate yourself on a specific part of a building, like framing, electrical, or plumbing. I'm Dean Johnson.
And I'm JoAnne Liebeler. Thanks for watching.
Home Time is made possible by Chevy Truck, who brings you Chevy full-size pickups, today's big pickups for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Chevy S10 pickups, today's compact pickups that play as hard as they work. Chevy S10 Blazer, today's sport utility vehicle in 2- and 4-door models. Chevy Astro all-wheel drive, today's mid-size van with standard 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. More people are winning with the heartbeat of America. Today's truck is Chevrolet. The National Home Time PBS series is brought to you weekly by Chevy Truck in conjunction with the Stanley Works.